Hello everyone, welcome to Chaudhary Data World channel. Today I am here with a very important question coming to anybody's mind, that is, what is the difference between a Sparksession and a Spark context? What are both uses of into this whole big data concept and the Spark concept? We'll be watching both of these into this particular video in whole details. So let's get started with the video. This Spark session versus Spark context, it's a very frequent question which is getting asked, and it is a very frequent confusion coming to anybody's mind as well. So Spark session, as I mentioned earlier in previous videos, that it is a higher level API, and the Spark context, it is a lower level API. So what does it mean, that higher level and lower level? So higher level deals with the APIs like data frame, data set, and then SQL. But a Spark context deal with the things with like it is having a lower level API calls, that is at lower level or granular level, whatever data frames you are having, those all are getting converted to RDD, and then it is getting executed in parallel processing. So all these basic level, that is granular level API calls, that means converting to RDD, keeping the information that how much work it is getting done or how much process it is has been executed on each of the machines. Each of these things are getting stored in Spark context, whereas in a Spark session, it's a higher level API which is dealing up with creating or visualization, because if you are having RDD and if it is directly throwing you out, and if you are watching the RDD, you'll not feel, and you will be having a less user experience into that. Also there are multiple other things apart from this creating data frame and all, which is a Spark session it is containing. I have already explained what is a Spark session, what all API calls are there in a Spark session into previous video. You can check it out. In this particular one, I will be more focused on a Spark context. So this picture which you are watching in front of you, it is a total aggregate whatever I am going to explain into this particular video. So suppose you are having multiple users, and whole of those users are interacting with a single transformation. You can assume like this, that somebody has given you a big data that is approximately of 100 GB data set. Now this 100 GB data set, it is not to be transformed, and it is having the transformations applied onto it. So of course it is going to be, suppose it is a big transformation, there are 5 persons which are working on that same data set, but the cluster which all those files are working is only the single cluster. How it can be possible? It can be possible through Databricks, right? If you are having Databricks or a Cloud cluster or a Cloud Spark, so what it is, the most frequent Cloud Spark is the Databricks. So in Databricks, 5 persons will be working. Each of the person will be having his own Spark session. Hope you are getting it. Not that Spark session is individual for each of the individual users, or you may say the developers. But when it is a Spark session is communicating with the cluster, there are multiple API calls with everybody's user ends. It is going to the cluster, but cluster will make only one Spark context. It is not the responsibility of cluster to create the Spark context. It comes in this particular one only, the first phase of architecture of a Spark only, that is driver program. Here only a Spark context come, but it is a centralized one which is communicating with each of the executor at the end. Now that what is executor? Executor is a worker node where it is a physical machine situated into which all the data set will be divided into each of the 20 GB data set. Suppose 5 machines are there, 20 GB each of the machines, it will be divided, and it will be transformed. It will be having what all were transformations to be applied with getting done over there. So it will be only a single Spark context be situated over there. Now this Spark context having several responsibilities and several functionalities which I will be covering up in this particular next slide. So you can see that what I have written it crystal clear difference what Sparksession can do and what Spark context can do. So in Sparksession, what I have written, Sparksession and Spark context are important components, but they serve different purposes and represent high level of API and low level of API respectively. In this particular chunk, I will be telling you what the higher level of API, and in this particular chunk, I will be telling you what is the lower level API. So let's go to it. Sparksession can create data frame and data set. That is of course a higher level API call. Perform SQL queries using Spark SQL. That also comes into higher level API call. Another point we are having is access high level functions and optimizations, and then work with structured and semi-structured data in a user-friendly manner. This Sparksession is having that functionality. The last one, that is manage the configuration and execution of a Spark application, is the most important work it is doing. That means configuration options such as application name, that means whatever Sparksession name will be there, it will be defined for each of the person will whatever users will be sitting over there will be having his own Sparksession, and that Sparksession will be having its own name. So all those are getting assigned by this Sparksession. The master URL, number of executor cores, the amount of memory per executor, all these things are getting decided by Sparksession. Configuration and all these things. Now coming to Spark context, it is responsible to create RDD. That's it. It will create RDD, and the information related to RDD it will keep it into itself, and it will communicate with the cluster manager. So create RDD and perform low level transformation and action. Access the lower level operation of a Spark. Of course, control the configuration and execution of Spark jobs, that are parallelism and task scheduling. That means what I have told you right now. That means it is having suppose 100 GB data, and that it is going to be divided. It is going to be divided on 20 GB basis if you are having 5 physical machines. So on that 10 GB parallel processing, all these are called parallel processing. All these are taken care by this Spark context, which is the centralized unit, or you may say assume like a unit. So set the level of parallelism by specify the number of partition. So I will covering up in the next video what is partition and how we can do partition or for RDD, or by controlling the degree of parallelism in transformation. Now a Spark context uses a task scheduler to allocate tasks to worker node based on resource availability. And at last, job submission, execution and monitoring, all these functionality. Job submission is that when it is partition is getting done, then of course that job whatever transformations it has come from the user end, it is will be submitted by the Spark with the help of a Spark context only. That you are not bothered for, that any user will be, end user will be not bothered for, whoever is writing the program will not be bothered for doing all these. All these things will be done internally. When you are creating the cluster, it will ask you that how many partitions you how many cores you want to keep, what will be the configuration of your machine. All these things it will ask you when you will be creating your cluster, and after that it will manage it by own. All these Spark context it will be managed by own, that how many partition it is going to be, how that job will be assigned to which particular machine. All these things it will be done internally. You will not get to know it, but what it is going on inside, I'm just explaining that one. Spark context coordinate the execution of tasks across the cluster, schedule tasks on available resources, and monitors their execution. Monitors it just implies that if suppose some particular program has been paused or cancelled or terminated, those all information it keeps, and what all tasks have been completed or failed, that also information it is keeping. And the last one, that it is managing the distributed computing resources, that are task scheduler in a Spark context assign task to worker node based on resource availability. Whatever resource availability it is there, it will assign the task to that particular worker node. And then data partition strategy. After that, it determines how the data is split into a smaller partition and distributed across worker node for processing. That means it's whole over, if you will tell that what the main functionality of a Spark context is. That means it is responsible to deal up with the RDDs, that is the lower or granular level of the data transformation, or you may say that whenever data it is going on the physical machine, it is going into the RDD format. That particular RDD, it is getting managed by Spark context, and this Spark context is only responsible to keep all the information related to all the physical machines or the virtual machines, and the whatever RDD it is throwing up there, whatever jobs it is throwing up there, all the statuses it is keeping up as the information, which is communicate on regular basis whatever it is getting asked by the user, communicating with the cluster manager. So that was whole about this whole Spark context and Spark session. Hope you found this video helpful and informative. And if you found it helpful, kindly like to the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next one.